Buenos dias.
Hello, Reid.
Oh, hi there, Ryder. Or should I say Pider?
Pider?
You're a pie guy. I think that's the
Hi.
first time you use that voice, or at least now that's what I associate with it every time I hear it.
Yeah, that's the voice. I don't know even where it comes from. The childhood craving for pie.
Deep down inside your soul, the little boy who wishes he could come out.
Yes, yeah.
To
It's
play.
actually the super creepy guy from Family Guy.
Oh,
the one
yeah.
that's after
Right.
Chris all the
Right.
time. That's where
Want
that-
some cookies?
Yeah.
You got
Chris.
a little whistle? I can't do the whistle, but he does that. Yeah. Every like third word. Hey there, boys.
Oh, Reid, scooch into the frame just a smidge.
cut off.
Frame scoocher.
Oh, Frame Scoocher. That's actually my middle name.
Frame scoocher.
Frame Scoocher. You know, some
Reid
people.
Frame Scoocher Garcia.
Yeah, some people have cool names. No.
Mine is Scoochie Butt.
Scoochie sinks in pants or sinks in couch.
Sinks in couch.
He who sinks in couch. I like it. Well, welcome to the show, Ryder.
Thank you.
Today is Tuesday, February 15th, 2022. This is episode 93. And yesterday on episode 92, which was Valentine's Day, happy Valentine's Day. You know, I forgot to send you my little sweetheart candy saying that you and me.
Yeah, and I was really offended too.
Good.
'cause
I have some dead
spent
flowers
a lot
out
of
there
time
for
by
you.
the locker crying.
By the locker, yeah. Yeah, I got messages from everyone else in class but you. That's how I know you really
Yours
love
must
me.
just be in the mail.
Yeah, in the mail. Yeah, when we used to be able to use that excuse all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not so much anymore.
Now it's like I send an email and it's like, oh, is it going to get there? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Sometimes
Spam
people will email me a
filters.
couple weeks later like, oh, it was in spam. I'm like, but you got my other one I sent you like an hour later. Like, yeah, but that other one's in
But the
spam.
other ones, yeah.
I'm like, okay, something's not working here.
Yeah.
When I can trust mail, physical mail to get there more than my electronic mail, I don't know. It's kind of annoying.
Yeah, I like the it's all just excuse ranges, right? it's I think it's harder to turn down that you received physical mail. No,
Yeah.
I don't. It didn't show up.
Yeah,
That huge box,
which makes me
with all
think
the
of
candy in it.
all of the fun roles they have on TV shows and movies of the guy or girl who's serving people, and they like sometimes put on these like elaborate like ruses or whatever just for fun. You ever seen a movie that does that?
I'm trying to think of one right now.
I can't
I'm
name one
drawing
off the
a
top of my
total
head,
blank.
but maybe Seth Rogen is involved. And he like shows up at the door and is like got like a full pizza costume on or whatever, and he's like, "No, I'm just joking. You're served." And it's like that would be fun and actually kind of tactical.
Well, if this show doesn't work out, Reid.
Porque no los dos. Porque no los dos. So yesterday on our show, we were talking about love. And it is marriage. Exactly. Thank you. I'm glad. I was wondering if you were going to get the next part of that.
Yes.
But we also, we didn't reference it, but it was on our thumb art. It was love is like a circle. Have you heard that one before?
I've heard it compared to wedding rings.
And what about the one ring?
To rule them all. Yeah, it's also a circle.
Yes,
Weird.
it is.
No, it's kind of evil. But,
it's from Chuck and Larry. Did you ever see that movie?
No.
Is Adam Sandler and I'm going to forget the actor's name, but Paul Blart, Mall Cop, that guy.
Okay.
I think it's the two of them, and they're firefighters, and I don't remember exactly what happened, but for whatever reason, they needed to do some ruse where they pretended they were married for life insurance or health insurance purposes or something like that. And they're both firemen, so they're supposed to be, like, super macho. Adam Sandler's, like, actually a calendar guy,
Nice.
And so it's like, you're not gay, but it's like, yeah, we're gay. And then, of course, there's some message in there where it's like, oh, love conquers all or something. I don't remember.
Did they end up being gay at the end? Like, I'm now I might have to watch it.
Yeah, I've got you on the edge of your seat.
Yeah, I'm so nervous.
I'm trying to remember if Jessica Biel might be the wife. I could be wrong about that, or a girl interest or something. But I don't know. Guess we'll find out. So we talked about that, and talked about Valentine's Day very briefly about the history of it, which we basically looked up because we didn't really know, and we're like, is it consumerism or is it rooted in something?
What is the festival, Lubinalia, that it was based off of? Where they where women would go through the street and they would get whipped with like bloody rags by the men.
That sounds lovely. We didn't pull up that nugget yesterday.
That far down.
No,
yeah. It's I don't know, something about love.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so it was the historychannel.com that we looked at, and we just looked at like one article real briefly, and it was basically like it's shrouded in mystery, and it could be these 5 different things, and there's actually 3 saints with the name Valentine or Valentinus or whatever.
Okay.
And then so Danielle's like, corporate America, they just want our money. Yeah.
Did it have the one guy from History Channel with the hair that shoots out on the sides?
No.
Like he's on all the alien ones. He's my favorite.
I like it. So we talked about that. We talked about my 3-month rule for dating back in high school. Did we talk about that before?
No, I didn't know you had any rules.
Yeah, I know.
You're such a rebel.
Big surprise. But I had a rule back in high school where I was like, I dated, and I took my relationships very seriously, even back then, and tried to really get to know each other, spend a lot of time together, all that kind of stuff. But I was like, I'm not going to marry somebody from high school. And so after like 3 months, 4 months, roughly in that range, I was like, we're going to break up. Like, there's no reason for us to be together. We're not going to get married. Because I was like, I'm going to go to college, date around a little while, and then get married after that. So yeah, Danielle ended up breaking that rule. So I guess she is the ultimate rebel after all. But before her, I stayed true to that rule, and I broke up with, for sure, at least one girlfriend, if not multiple, because of just that.
Because of your rule?
Because of my
I
rule.
also like having the rule because when you need to fall back on it, I'm sorry, it's policy. It's not you.
Don't blame the
it's
people,
policy.
blame the policy.
You put bureaucracy into your own life.
I like it. I never thought about that before, but yes, I did. I put policies into my own life early on, even. We talked about the love languages. Do you know your love language is?
Oh, no, I don't.
What about your 8 languages?
Oh, I've never read that book or whatever it was.
Yeah, it was more than 2 pages, so
it's not just pictures.
Not just pictures.
Yeah, I'll probably never read it.
I'm gonna go off the top of my head. I don't know if I know them all off the top of my head, but there's 5 of them. I know that much, and it's like gifts, quality time, acts of service, words of affirmation, also kind of known as like compliments, things like that. And then the last one is hating your in-laws. Oh, wait, no.
Is
That
that
might
a
be
love
that might be the
language?
sixth one.
Yeah, it was. What was Eric's sarcasm?
Sarcasm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good one too. But yeah, so of those 4.5 that I remembered, which one of those do you respond
Oh,
with most?
dude, I think maybe quality time.
Yeah.
But that might be changing. I might change all the time. Who
Yeah.
knows? Yeah.
Yeah, just like a
Yeah.
cute little amoeba.
Gremlin?
Amoeba gremlin.
Amoeba. Okay, here we go.
Are gremlins changing all the time?
I don't know, but they change once, and it's pretty drastic. They go from cute to really scary.
So that's the change you're
That's
undergoing.
the change. Yeah.
Great. I'm
Yeah.
glad to hear that. I'm just gonna scoot back this way a little bit now
Yeah.
as that transformation continues to happen. So that was one of our challenges. So if you want a fun little challenge, was to do the love languages quiz. Like most things that get created, I'm sure even if it's not the legally licensed version, you could find 17 copies of it online. For free. You could do it in less than 10 minutes. And the challenge was for you to do it so you know for yourself. And then if you have a significant other or someone you're courting, you could ask them to do it as well. So that way like, hey, why aren't you acknowledging that I spent 5 hours cleaning the house when they didn't even notice it at all? It's because they don't care about that. But maybe they do care about, they'd rather you have spent that, 5 hours doing something with it. So that's a lot of times it can be sad because you see these people who are both maybe working hard. I mean, not that happens that often. Let's be real. Both working hard at the relationship, but they're working past each other. Because it's like, oh, I'm doing all these things, and I'm doing all these things, and it's like, no, doing something like that can help you at least kind of get on the same page. Earlier, the better, right? Then we talked a little bit about the different types of love. There's like agape. Have you heard of that before? Yeah, and I didn't realize it until I looked up the Wikipedia page on it, but supposedly that's like a Christian, very, very founded in Christian faith, even though the word comes from a Greek word. But agape, and then different types of love between like that and then just kind of romantic love, and then also like family and friends. And also we talked a little bit about if it's different to have that love for your family than it is
like
your friend.
Platonic and erotic, or eros and agape, and there's even like another one that I'm blanking on. But yeah.
There's a whole bunch of those different types of love. So real quick though, do you think your love either is different or should be different for a family member than a friend? That was one we weren't.
That's
really
a
sure
good
about.
question. I don't know. I think there's potential for it to be deeper, but it depends on the relationship with the family member. At the end of the day, too, like it depends on some. Yeah, it's too dependent. I would say no. Overall. In general, I would say family needs to earn your friendship the same way anyone else does. I don't think you blanket owe anything to anybody.
Yeah, and that's been something that, I feel like people make it seem like you owe your family more, or that you should be more graceful for them or things like that. And I would say that I think that family definitely gets a lot more grace. But maybe that's also part of the problem. And maybe that's part of the reason why we're, frankly, such assholes to our family, because they'll tolerate it. And, that's something that I heard sometime within the last few years, but or at least realized, which was your spouse or significant other will see the worst of you and get the worst of you a lot of times. And I've certainly noticed that with Danielle. I'm like, yeah, like sometimes when like I get really stressed out and we got a lot of stuff going on, or say like when we're in the RV trying to get something working, real frustrated, I'll be like, give me the monkey wrench. And I'm like, that's not about you.
Yeah.
It's about that monkey. That, which is another story for another day. But yeah, I mean, do you give your worst to your spouse?
Oh, I think like even when I was doing the therapy thing, we talked a lot about the people we love are the ones we end up lashing out at the most, right? And it's part of it is because they love us and they're supposed to forgive us and they can see our dark side and all this other stuff. But what's interesting is to also just sort of reset it and think of them in a different way, right? Not as somebody who will take this, but as somebody that, because you love them, should never have to experience that.
Yes,
it's just hard to do the reset, because when you're frustrated, you tend to want to show it to somebody.
And they're always there.
They're always there, and then but the whole reason you're frustrated and want to show it to somebody so you can get attention or comfort, right? So you want comfort from your spouse for that horrible thing that is going on in your life, and we kind of tend to do it through anger or lashing out. But all that's like a tool to get to your goal, and your goal might just be getting love.
Yeah. So I don't know if we've talked about it on this show or not, but regardless, we'll talk about it right now. One of the things we're going to be doing with Hope for Life is called must-haves. And it's kind of a bit of a joke, but kind of not, because it's an acronym. MUST haves. Moderately useful stuff to have, and they're called our must-haves. And I think we need to have like a caveman brain T-shirt where it's got like quadrants like on your front, where it's like, what is it I need? Like, what's my core need right now? Like comfort, food, water, sex, and then it's like whenever you're like, like, oh, I'm gonna go work on the RV. I know I'm gonna be really stressed. I'll be like, I'll just walk up and and put your hand on the section.
Put your hand there. Yeah. I like the nonverbal thing. We should. It's like having a passcode or a phrase, but you don't even have to have words.
It's like, I know I'm gonna get mad, so let's just skip that like anger step, and then maybe we'll have a giant plush sponge that we give people too, so they can just have you on the couch, and then they can just yell at you and punch you, and it'll just absorb it all. It'll just soak it all in.
That's what I'm here for.
We'll have to get people on a subscription, so that way as their sponge gets destroyed.
Yeah, I know. And you're like, wow, we've got this one person, and they've got 2 subscriptions at once.
Yeah, like, and if you buy 10, you get one bonus one that actually has rock inside. So someone goes to punch it. Ah! So that was yesterday, with a little bit of an aside to our must-haves. And then our other challenge from yesterday was kind of a 2-parter, which was the first parter was the love languages, and then the second parter was telling somebody that you're proud of them or that you love them, because a lot of people never hear that. A lot of people don't hear it very often. And one of the things we talked about yesterday was, maybe it feels a little weird to say those words, especially if you don't say them very often. But also by saying them more often, it becomes more normal. You get more used to it. But also don't be afraid to say that to like your friends or something like that. And that's something that, especially for Danielle and I, we've started to do more of that within the last year. We've enjoyed it, and made me think of a little Five Guys, not Five Guys Burgers and Fries, not sponsored, but now I'm hungry. The Fab Five, the gay Queer Eye. Have you ever seen that show?
No.
Okay. Well, they improve people's lives. They go and do basically transformation of their life on 5 different ways. And there was a girl in there, and they went to Japan. So you might like that one. You should watch that one. It'd be interesting to see, since you've been there and got the culture. But within the Japan ones, you find some interesting things about the Japanese culture, at least according to them, right? I haven't vetted any of it. But one of them, like, this woman had nominated this other woman, and when the 5 Americans were like, hey, should we hug her? Like, is that okay? And they're like, yes, please, like, hug her, give her lots of hugs. And then at the end of the episode, or later on, like, the 2 women hug, and they're like, yeah, we never hug. And it's like, oh, we should do this more often. This is nice. And it's like, oh, well, maybe it's just because it's not like a cultural thing, but at the end of the day, cultural things don't matter in the privacy of your own home, according to me at least. Now, it's a controversial statement, but
if you can deprogram yourself from culture, good luck.
Yeah. But something small like that, like a hug, like, let's hug when we see each other, like, okay, like, you can do that in your house, right?
Oh yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Pull the blinds first.
Don't let the neighbors see. Oh, no. What will they say? Okay, the Super Bowl, and then we'll move on. But did you see the Super Bowl commercial, Keeping Up with the Joneses?
I did not watch. I didn't even know it was on.
Oh, wow.
So this is going to be a boring segment.
Post-consumerist American over here. I lasted till halftime, and then I left. So I'm cool too, basically. Is what I'm trying to say.
Who were the
sports ball teams?
Yes, the characters you were rooting for.
I literally didn't care. It wasn't Tom Brady this year, so that's new.
Okay.
Although it doesn't matter how good he is at football, Peyton Manning will continue to make an appearance in all sorts of things. I think he was in 15 commercials. That guy's got to have out-earned his money from just all of the sponsorships and stuff he's done. But anyways, real quick, the commercial they did was, I think it was a Chevy commercial or something, trucks racing, and then one of them pulls up, and it's Tommy Lee Jones, and he's like, Jones. He looks over, and it's Rashida Jones or something like that, and they're trying to race, and they do it like 3 or 4 times. And the last one is Nick Jonas, and he's like, Jonas. Like, keeping up with the Jonases. Oh, ha, 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 ha. So it made me think about that.
Okay,
Much better when I describe it than when you actually see it.
I'm sure. I'm picturing it now.
Yep, here we go.
That was a good
Helpful for life. Welcome to What the Hell is Water? I am Reid Garcia, founder of Helpful for Life.
This is Ryder Richards. Nothing else to say there.
Yeah,
I am blanked.
Me neither.
Yeah,
I just figured we'd just see where it goes,
Waiting.
Yeah, how long do you think we
Is
could last?
Gonna
like
go
this?
somewhere?
Yeah, I don't know. So today, welcome to What the Hell is Water? This is episode 93. It's February 15th, 2022. And today we're going to be talking about things that we wish we knew when we were younger. So there's a song by a band called The Faces. And the chorus or the hook of the song goes, I wish that I knew what I knew now when I was younger. Have you heard it before?
Nope.
Should I sing it again? Just to check?
Yeah, because I didn't quite.
Yeah,
go ahead. Bring it. One more time. Warm it up.
But yeah, so I just thought that would be a fun conversation for us to have because, as we bring up on here all the time, there's a lot of things that we've picked up and we've kind of realized about ourselves and about the world and all that kind of stuff as time goes on. And I thought it'd be interesting to have a time and space where we just kind of prompt each other and see what shakes out. And I guess there's a couple of different ways we could do this. We could just kind of go blanket, like, if I was going to tell myself in the past and just leave it at that, or if you wanted to like go and say, 15-year-old me or 30-year-old, want to pick an age, or if we want to pretend that you're writing like a book to the world. What slant would you like to take on this one?
I like let's just jump into it and see where it goes, because at this point, I cannot think of anything. My mind is totally blank.
Good. Well, that's good. No, let's.
So yeah,
let's start with that.
We'll have to get started.
Grease the skids.
How to keep your mind blank. That would have been a nice skill to have as a kid.
Well, how to keep your mind blank. No, I mean,
Yeah.
You joke maybe.
No, but it's like, because I was thinking about meditation, of course.
Yeah. But it's funny because I was like, is it because he's blanking right now? I don't know, but I think that's a really good one, and that's one that I need to practice more myself, because especially brain running all the time, hyper analytics, seeing everything. Then you decide to make your business life, so it's hard to decide when is life off.
Yeah, well, it's actually there's some pretty definitive ways to figure that out.
Just been working on my life balance lately.
yeah, right.
So I guess that is a good one. Like figuring out to tell yourself, hey, every now and then, how would you word it? You want to slow down? You want to turn your brain off? Like, what would you, if you were to look into the looking glass of the past?
Yeah, no, I mean, when we're talking about like writing a letter to your younger self or something, I think one of the things I would think about saying, which my younger self wouldn't listen to, is that like, don't be anxious about who you are, figuring out who you are. You already are that. Like, and don't be so nervous about other people.
Yeah.
That was something I was, constantly sort of racked by, sort of concern for the way other people saw me. And I would tell myself to dump all that, but I wouldn't do it because, of course, it's like deeply psychological. But yeah, those things, I, of course, think it would have been great if I had some sort of meditative practice or something to sort of help me work through the sort of anxiousness of those other things, of how I saw myself in the world, feeling lost, feeling anxious, how other people were going to attune themselves to me or not, and not caring so much about it, because of course it'd be funny to go, you will only have this friend for 5 years anyway, right?
Yeah.
Why do you care so much? Quit caring so hard about that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I want to just go ahead and take a chunk of conversation that we could have after every little one of these and push it towards the end of the episode, which is why our past selves would not have listened to us, and how can we move past that, especially for other people out there, right? Like, how do you work through that stubbornness, I guess, and also like, hey, like it's going to take multiple steps before this really clicks and makes sense to you, but trust me on this one, you should listen and start moving towards that. So we'll have that conversation
Yeah.
a little later, but more specifically on this one. So you talked about caring less what other people think, right? And there's a term we've brought up many times on here, a people pleaser, which you've self-diagnosed as.
Yeah.
And that is combined with a little bit of anxiety, which, by the way, I would be curious to know the correlation on those two, but I bet they're pretty high, people pleaser
Yeah.
and anxiety.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because when you're looking for outside sources for your own validation,
Yeah,
yeah,
makes sense.
then all of a sudden you put yourself into a situation where you're having to constantly get that external validation. So your anxiousness is until you get the validation, and then what? Well, you just start the cycle all over again.
Yeah.
So you're always working for that outside love. Yeah,
Tough loop to be in.
yeah, because it's reliant on others, and so there's a fascinating spot there where, because I'm somewhat introverted, I also wonder if part of that comes from that whole loop, right? Is needing to be alone in order to refill the energy, because there's no anxiety when you're alone.
So what
At
you're
least for me.
so okay. I thought you were gonna say the loop was okay. So I'm an introvert, so I don't go out with people a ton necessarily in this case, which isn't always true, by the way. And then so when I do go out, it's very important to me that I make sure all the people I'm around do think I'm cool. I am pleasing them. They're enjoying it. Then I go back into my cave and I think and analyze every single situation that happened, and sit there in crippling anxiety, wondering how I did.
Yeah.
And then I stay in my cave for a while until maybe those feelings fade a little bit enough for me to be like, okay, now I'll go out again once every year.
Yeah, that's about right. No, there is a kind of a side. I think that was a large part of when I was making art, right? You're in there painting or drawing or whatever, and you'll cycle through thoughts or things that have happened, and and there's certain things that will stick and show up, and you can be upset or anxious about them or whatever, but there is also something about not having to perform for anybody else when you're alone that is a kind of a relief. And so that side of being an introvert was kind of nice. It didn't mean that I didn't ruminate, but I ruminated less, like, because there wasn't that sort of anxiety or fear or whatever. So yeah, I don't know. Those are the major things, and I think I probably started this topic off wrong, going immediately into like big psychological issues. I should have said something like how to change your truck oil.
No.
What would you wish you would have known?
No,
Yeah.
I think that, I mean, that's exactly what I'm looking for. Just wanted to see. And so that's an interesting one that pops up because for me as well, I think a lot of the first ones would be psychological things. And I think that's been one of the biggest lessons for me is, okay, you start a company, it's literally just you, solo entrepreneur. Well, guess what? It's very important that you do things well and you perform well, because if not, there's nobody else, right? That's an interesting thing about pretty much everything else you do in the world, whether it's work, school, otherwise. In school, there's a lot of individual stuff, but there's also group stuff too. But there's always somebody else to blame, even if it's just the person who's grading you, right? Or your boss, or your darn employee, or not employees, or I guess it depends on where you're at. Like people who work for you, people that work with you.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't have the right tools for the job. There's always something to complain about. But when you're a solo entrepreneur, all those complaints just become about yourself.
Yeah, because you are both the janitor and the CEO.
Yep. And then it's like, well, if we only had this thing, it's like, well, you could get that thing. You just need to do that. So anyways, the point being is, as I shifted towards that, it helped me realize just how important the me is, and how important it is for me to get the head stuff right, and the focus stuff right, and the productivity stuff right. Because when you take away all of the scaffolding, all of the structure that's provided naturally from the school, the average job, things like that, you don't have anything to help you do that. And so me, over the last few years, part of my journey has been figuring that out, and figuring out, okay, well, how do you best, like, one, intake information and then process it, and then how do you turn it into synthesized information that's useful to other people? So that's been one part of it. And another part is figuring out how do you work well and focused, but making sure you're focusing on the right task instead of, productively procrastinating, which is where you're working on something, but it's not the thing you should be working on the most.
Yeah, and it's also easy to, there's something very crazy about these distractions. And, do you remember when we were talking about Zettelkasten, then Nicholas Luhmann, the guy that came up with that sort of note-taking system? at one point somebody was asking him like, well, just about writing, and he was saying that he goes, well, if I ever get bored, I just move on to something else. And he just kind of talked about it in a sense that like he was always sort of distracting himself by moving on to the next thing, but that was part of this system that allowed him to be very successful. And I'm just like, oh, I want some of that, right?
Yeah.
Because it was kind of like he had built himself a system. So when you're talking about like school and all these other kinds of things that provide a framework for us, then like he basically made his own. He was such a smart guy that he made his own system that made him, quite prolific as an author and very successful. And I'm just kind of thinking, like, that's, at least for me, that's the appeal of all the behavior hack stuff that's going on in the world, and all the idea of self-help books is that we can read these things and find a system that will help guide us. And I'm a little, on occasion, a little bit doubtful about it because there's so much self-help out there that I've become kind of doubtful of our ability to like manifest that stuff, to control ourselves. And so, yeah, when it also comes to, when it comes to asking yourself or giving advice to yourself as a kid, like when I'm thinking about these systems, like when you're in school, like what is something you would tell yourself now? To
Like
yourself
the
that
opposite.
was back in a
Yeah,
system,
that's a
right?
good
Because you're
point.
not in a system now, so you have to make your own, and you're finding it to be difficult. So when you were in a very comfortable, figured out, locked down system, what would you tell yourself?
Yeah, and also, what are the things that we're doing wrong today? Sometimes despite knowing better. Other times, we don't necessarily know or realize what we're doing, right? So yeah. And was that actual question for me?
Yeah, that was.
Okay, yeah.
I'm actually kind of curious.
No. I think one of the couple, the first thing that comes to mind is like, yeah, it's value the things that you've already done and that you're doing, because it's very easy to focus on the next thing, right? And this is what I want to do. Here's all of the things that I want to do. Especially now, creating this company and potentially other companies, all that kind of stuff. And it feels sometimes like you're trying to boil the ocean, if you've heard the phrase. It's like, so it's good to be like, hey, take a look back and recognize all the things you've done up to this point and all the things you even just did yesterday. And also forget the like productivity and the achievement and that type of stuff. And don't forget all the good things you have that are worth living for in the first place, right? Like, so back when I was a kid, is like, plenty of time was just spent hanging out with friends and playing video games or doing whatever. For you, shooting innocent children with BB guns, I imagine, was part of your pastime.
They were grasshoppers, not children.
Finding dead bodies and poking them with sticks.
Yeah.
Then
lighting them on fire,
and then offering your siblings to the aliens, hoping they would come. I imagine these are things you do.
We did have
Mexico.
a little, temple that we put people on top of, and cut their heart
throw
out
them
and
into the
melt.
fire, realize the fire's real, and they're like, oh no,
I thought that was an alien fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what your childhood was, right?
Yeah, of course, naturally. I mean, everyone in New Mexico knows this.
So yeah, for me, my advice from previous self, younger Reid, up to future Reid was, one, pay attention to the things you've already done, and then pay attention to the stuff that's not related to doing. Just being and being present, right? And then another one would be set up a system or structure of some point, of some sort.
Even when you're in school, would you still set up a structure?
Okay. So
going back in time.
Well, that's the thing and this is going to sound like full of myself or whatever, but there's just kind of the reality of the situation. Like, I've always been a very smart person. And because of that, I was in the advanced classes, gifted and talented and things like that. I was taking math, year at advance, all that kind of stuff. And so, as weird as it may sound, I actually did a decent amount of coasting in school, where I could get good grades without having to try too hard or study a whole bunch or work a whole bunch of homework, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, part of me wonders if I did have a bit of a system where I was doing more or doing more like on my own on the side, that'd be one thing that I would maybe try and like sprinkle a seed in there and be like, hey, just pick up one hobby on the side. Like maybe dabble in, those electronics or whatever. Just kind of make some stuff for fun. Or hey, dabble in art. Do something where you're creating something outside yourself. That would be one other thing I would tell past self. I'm like, even if it completely sucks, it'd be cool to see like, hey, that was the year I made this thing, or oh, that was the year I did that truck gallery or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, that's the year I did my 365 illustrations like Kaylina did, which we'll link to. So yeah, I think creating something outside of yourself would be another tip. And then as far as creating a system, yes and no. It would be with a grain of salt, right? It's like, hey, maybe it'd be good for you to get some sort of system, and also like be a little more aware of your time and where it's going, but not to a fault, right? All of this stuff is like with a big grain of salt. It's like, hey, okay, you played video games for 5 hours today, little Reid, whatever the number was, right? You probably would have just as much fun and get just as much out of that if you played 3 hours and then you took those 2 hours and you did something different. Because the law of diminishing returns, and like you scratch that itch, you got that dopamine. Now go do something else. That would maybe be another thing. What about you?
Yeah.
Or any thoughts on that?
No, I like a lot of that. Like, I don't want to rob childhood by looking backwards and being like, be more systematized,
Yeah, I mean, really hesitating because of all this, right?
Right. It's like, optimize your life starting at the age of 9. That sort of sounds like a recipe for disaster. So I'm always kind of interested if, one of the things that I would tell myself now is that and you've talked about this before, but none of the grades are really such a big deal. And that most of the pressures put on you are also completely artificial. It's only because you happen to be in this weird world that you think that good grades and showing up and doing all these things is really important, when most of it isn't. A lot of people get out and then they start their life and then they take off. And I kind of wish that I hadn't put so much pressure on myself in certain ways to think that I needed to be so good at so many things when I was there.
Yeah.
And so there's some of that I would probably tell myself to do less, which is fascinating.
Yeah, it's interesting because, and I don't know exactly what you believe on any of this, right? But I'm a firm believer, as regardless of religion or otherwise, like I am who I am today because of all of the things that I've done and all the things that have happened to me, so on and so forth. So I think that if I changed any one of these small things, I would be very different today, and I would not be this version of me that I am, and I wouldn't have had the things happen to me. So I am very much in the case, like I try and live without regrets, and I'm like, don't want to change it. Don't want to close my eyes. You know that one?
I'm going to pretend I don't, so I don't have to carry on singing.
Man, it worked earlier,
Camera.
Yeah, just
well, it was the awkward.
Yeah, the joke's on you guys. We actually have oh, sorry, man, I forgot your name. Tyler. Steven Tyler. Yeah, Steven Tyler. He's off to the side, so that one was just a nod for our audience member. So Ryder's just looking to see if he would finish off the mic. So no worries there. But yeah, as we're telling our past selves things, I'm like, okay, yes, I would. These are the things I would suggest, but in some ways I wouldn't. And doing less is definitely part of it. And as a child looking up at me today, part of it would be like, hey, don't forget that kind of unbridled creativity, questioning, joy, exploration, all those types of things that children, I don't know if they naturally have, but I feel like they naturally have till we beat it out of them. Yeah. And you were talking earlier about how you wanted to feel less judged back in the day and like less pressure on yourself. So I wanted to make sure we mentioned on Friday, we talked about judgment. So we had a whole episode on judgment. Danielle and I talked about that. And then we also referenced one of our previous ones on expectations. So between the two of those episodes, I have a lot of discussion about those expectations we set on ourselves, other people set on us, and how that affects who we are and all that kind of stuff. But real quick, I want to make sure to plug one of the things that we're doing this week, and then we'll get back to this discussion. So this week, we are teaching people to learn to cook to impress a date. So every weeknight this week, we started yesterday, we are for completely free. You guys just show up and we'll teach you something new Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And on Friday, we're going to cook a whole meal together. And so you can either do that by yourself. You can just watch for entertainment. We will advertise the groceries and stuff you need if you want to do it in advance. If you want to buy the stuff and actually literally be chopping things up and cooking alongside with us. If you want to make it into a date with somebody else, you totally can. The thought process on this was, hey, you guys just went through Valentine's Day and maybe it was good. Maybe it was amazing. I don't know.
Yeah,
But
maybe you felt judged.
maybe you felt
Right?
judged.
Like
Yeah,
there were
exactly.
some expectations there.
Yeah, look at you. Look at you.
Go back.
But once you learn how to cook, then you have so much more control over what you can do. And that's every day. But it's also if you're trying to impress somebody. And that could be for a date, for Valentine's Day. Maybe you want to have a good time. Cooking can be an amazing activity to do together if you want to do that. But yeah, so check us out. Join us. You can go to helpfulforlife.com/KYK-cohorts, which we'll put the link in the chat for that. But you can also just go to h4l.live. And that's our website. It's a standing website where you can always see when we're live. There's a feed right there on that website, and we'll put a schedule on there as well so you can see our future live streams. And you can go to whatever platform we're on if you want to subscribe on any particular one of those. If you don't have a strong preference, I recommend YouTube for that. And again, this is live and chat, so please come and talk with us. Chat in the chat box. I guess that's what they call it. Chat in the chat box. And you can help drive the conversation. You can ask the questions you have. We can help solve your specific problems. But the whole point of this week is to teach people how to cook. And then also, of course, if people want to dive in deeper, we have our course, Kickstart Your Kitchen, where they can learn more for a special price, temporarily, $69.
Who came up with that number?
It actually wasn't me. It had nothing to do with sexual things until they told me. I was like, we're going to keep that, and we're going to keep the sexual number, and we're going to put in a bonus, something to do with sexy stuff and food, because why not?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Edible
when
undies?
69.
Yeah.
When in 69. Kind of like Rome, but it blows.
Yeah.
So back to our discussion. So let's do a quick, just like 5 minutes here. Let's shake out any other kind of nuggets that we would like. And of course, I want to make sure we're aware. Like, I'm sure there's plenty else that we would want to tell each other, or not each other, but our previous selves as we think about this more and whatnot. And we probably could do hours and hours of this. But let's spend about 5 minutes or so to do that and talk about any other things that are kind of shaken out. And then let's talk about why past self wouldn't listen, and maybe some of how we could work through that. So any other things kind of popping in your head as far as things that you were like, oh yeah, you should really tell younger Ryder that?
Yeah. I think one of them would be less, be more adventurous, be less concerned about your future. And that would be taking on things like trips and travel and being willing to go to a big school far away, like those kind of things that I didn't really do. And I did some versions of those, and at various times I did travel. I have traveled quite a bit, but I would like, the funny thing is, I don't think I would ever have regretted traveling more, right? I think that could only be more beneficial. So there's things like that, but there's this momentary thing where it's just like, well, the price to do that would be X, Y, and Z, and I'm really working towards this. And then finding that I can't even remember now what those goals were. I had this amazing opportunity, but I didn't pursue it. Why? Because I needed to really solidify my life at the current time. So that kind of thing, I would tell myself to just like to do more of those things that at the time seemed frivolous. And so that's one of the things I'd push that hard.
Yeah, no, I like that. And there's a couple of little strings in there to pull on. One is, so you were telling yourself to be more adventurous, be more open to things and trying things and worrying less about like the finished result. Because it's funny because that end result, that thing we're looking for, can sometimes be so paralyzing to us in the now. It's like, oh, I can't do that. I need to be doing this, right? Yeah. And I've said it before, how the busier you are, the more stuff you have going on. It's kind of like blinders. And if anyone's ever had this happen, like in a panic attack or something, you can literally sometimes see like your vision starting to narrow as like the edges kind of creep in, and you just can only see like what's right in front of you. Yeah. And it's almost, I don't know if this is true or not, this is completely off the cuff, but it might be related to caveman brain, like survival stuff, which is like, hey, get rid of all other distractions, focus just on this one thing, and do the thing you need to do to survive right now, which back then was probably, fighting off a an enraged crocodile which had a clock that he swallowed. I don't know. Maybe that's what it was back then in caveman times.
Yeah, and then your shadow can escape and run off from you.
Exactly.
And, all these
yeah.
horrible
And then you
things.
try and decide, do I like little boys or not? And then it's just this whole previous lifetime.
Oh, boy.
But yeah, so the edges come creeping in, and you focus on just the thing that you need to do in front of you. Well, that inherently limits how you're viewing life, first of all, and and the stuff you're able to do.
It's definitely one of the things when I was teaching elementary school that there's a big deal about having to make the space safe enough that the students can actually learn, because otherwise it's all fear-based thinking, it's all fight or flight response, and your brain literally cannot learn when you're in fear mode. So there's other things about that focus that's really negative as well, right? To learn, you actually have to have kind of a meta perception. You actually have to pull out of that instantaneous thing in order to sort of get a larger view. You have to feel comfortable. Your brain has to be able to focus. But if you're always worried about somebody sneaking up behind you or whatever, and this can be mentally, like metaphorically, you have thoughts that are creeping up on you, and you have fears and anxieties, and all that it just plays a number on your system. And so some of this comes back to these psychological things. Like if I had to tell myself something when I was younger, it would be to sort of be more psychologically healthy, right?
Yeah.
Which is, it's not that I was unhealthy necessarily. It's just that we're all products of our time and who, what was important to us. And everyone is sort of born with a disposition in certain ways. Some people right now are just like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I was free my entire life. And so, like, to you, awesome. You're probably wishing the exact opposite, that at one point you would have put some restraints on yourself.
Right.
But, I tended to have the opposite scenario playing out. So I'm kind of, I'm kind of more interested in that idea of like, if you could tell yourself things that would just sort of be like, what would be, 2 things you could do that would really change your life or drive you forward into the person you want to be now. And it might be something like, go do Habitat for Humanity in, South America.
Yeah. Okay. So real quick, I want to grab this while the thought came back, because earlier you were talking about some things you wanted to do. And first I want to say kind of this sentence that I've just developed in my head, which is kind of encapsulating a handful of these things, is be open, learn, explore, and have fun. Like, I feel like if you have that kind of as your mantra, like, you'll be all right. I feel like if you're doing those things, like, hey, be open to new ideas, new places, new people, to being wrong. I think that's a really big message to everyone out there. It's okay to be wrong. And I sent you an article the other day about rationality, and one of the things it was talking about was there's this kind of rationalist movement, which we'll talk about another day, and maybe we'll even talk about that article another day, who knows. But one of the things in the article was telling people, like, to stop thinking so much in absolutes and recognize there's a spectrum, things we've said before, and not black and white, live in the gray, all those types of things, but internalize those things. Like, hey, I have a view or a thought on racism, on religion, on politics, and those things are going to morph and change and update it. And right now, it's just the best I have with what I got, to channel a little bit of Alexandra. Like, that's what science is. Like, you take in all the information you have, you make a decision with the information you have, and then you go forward and you iterate and you keep changing. So having that shift where it's like, okay, that's where I'm at today. These are my thoughts and beliefs today. But being open to being wrong, because guess what? I don't care how smart you are. You're going to learn stuff as time goes on. And traveling and exploring and learning are all things that help you take in more information, understand more. And that's another big thing of, like, for me, one of the biggest areas that I've grown over the past few years has been in my empathy side, as I've started to be a lot more observant of people, and as I've started to do a lot more travel and see the way things are in different parts of the country, in different parts of the world. It helps me have a better picture, a better forming of, oh, this is what reality is. This is what people are like. Different people think a lot differently than I do and have way different reactions to the same stimulus than I do. So anyways, there's a handful of things on that. So yeah, let's just go ahead and jump over to the next part, which was if we were to talk about our younger selves, and we were going to say, okay, yeah, Reid, great advice from on high. Yeah, sure. But I'm not going to do any of that. Or why should I do that? Why should I believe that? What would your coaching be to past self, or whoever's listening, right? Like, hey,
Yeah.
even if you hear this advice and you think it's good, like, what are some ways for people to actually start doing something with it? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. There's a kind of, I'm going to bring up something here that I think we've touched on once in the show. Sometimes you have to surround yourself with people who can deprogram you from your own anxieties or fears or whatever your state of being is. And I remember like 10 years ago listening to an NPR episode where whenever there's boys are converted into basically becoming terrorists and suicide bombers, and this was in Muslim countries, and well, there's not Muslim countries, that's silly, but they're talking about the Middle East. And one of the things about that was that whenever you get around a whole bunch of other guys, and especially boys, when they get around a whole bunch of other guys, then they start believing in things and acting out for the group. And there's a peer pressure based system there. And they said the way to deprogram a kid who's willing to give his life up for an ideology is to just put him in a room with his mom for a couple of hours. And all of a sudden he doesn't want to kill himself anymore.
Wow.
And you go, wait, the easiest way to deprogram somebody is to put them with somebody who loves them. And so when I think about what I could do to help my younger self out, it would have to be maybe being more accepting and tolerant of, and not so sort of flippant about the people who love me. And there was an instance where my mother at one point, like, I was in kind of a bad space, and she sort of had a long conversation with me, and it sort of pulled me out of that space. And so one of the things I would suggest is, if I could go back and tell my younger self something, is surround yourself with more people who care about you, who can deprogram you from your anxieties. And so that would be one thing. And then actually, like, listen to them, right? Instead of thinking you're so smart.
Yeah.
Because that's the other problem with, for like guys like you and me, is we think we're smart, but that doesn't do a whole lot for emotions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's worth pointing out that although it's certainly possible that someone exists within your life that can serve that function, sometimes you need to go outside of your existing circle to hear these things. And a great example is involving moms, period. Like, a mom can give a child, especially a son, advice 1,000 times. But then if he hears it one more time from somebody else who's not related, who's not his mom, who, bonus points if they happen to be an expert, or a friend who's like experienced something, then it clicks, right?
Yeah.
And then mom, of course, is like, I told you 10 years ago, I've been telling you, no more meat until you eat your pudding. Like, that's what I've been saying.
Yes.
But only black
Mom
pudding.
listened to Pink Floyd a whole lot.
Yeah, she did. Mom's been free her whole life, man. Let me tell you. Yeah, she was born at the right time, into the right commune. No, so I like that a lot. So getting the people around you and showing you the love and the care to help you deprogram and unprogram the issues or whatever, the layers on top that probably need to be shed. And so that's a good one. I like that a lot. For me, I think the answer is to really emphasize exposing yourself to more people. Like
Reid.
this. Woo! No, but like finding other people with different ways of thinking, coming from different locations, different religions, all these types of things. I think the earlier in your life you can do those types of things, the earlier you realize, like, yes, we're different. It's worth acknowledging. But there's a common thread, we are all part of the same genus, the same species. So there's at least that going for us. And then there's also a lot of like, okay, well, we love each other, our families, we want the best for people. Like, generally that's what most people want. And the things they do are trying to help do more of that, help people be more successful, happier, joyous, all those types of things. But I think if more people traveled and more people met a wider variety of people and did it with intentionality and openness, I think the world would look completely different. And one of the ways that's easy to do that as a young person is to move away from home. at least for a year. Like, just look at it as an experiment, you know? Like, it's okay for it to be a complete failure, quote unquote, and then for you to have to come back or whatever. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned earlier about the idea of being open to go into school farther away or something like that. And for me, I went to school where it was 3.5 hours away from home. So it had enough distance to where it was away, and it was large. So, you know, I had 50,000 students roughly, and it was Texas A&M. So there's plenty of Texans and there's plenty of white people for sure, but there's a sprinkling of other types of people in there as well. But for me, the bigger next step was when Danielle and I moved to California, and talk about seeing a different, you know, way of life from hard right to hard left on the political spectrum, and then just a whole bunch of different people. Where in Texas, like, there's a ton of Mexicans, so met and interacted with a lot of Mexican people. But in California, there's a whole bunch of Asian people, and there's a whole bunch of immigrants and people who either came from another country, you know, themselves, or maybe they're one generation removed or things like that, and a different type of immigration than from Mexico. So I don't know, just exploring and seeing other people and moving away, I think, is a huge thing. And it can be really scary, but I feel like moving away can, you know, it forces you to figure some things out and meet some new people. So that's a big one I'd push on, moving away and traveling.
Yeah, I like that. It's one of the funny things that we've talked about before on the show, that people always invent a whole lot of reasons not to go do things.
Right.
But anyone that's ever done those things never says that they're bad things. Almost no one ever says, boy, that trip to Italy really sucked. Like, you know, it's mostly the exact opposite. That was life-changing. And then it's weird to think that I would be, you know, home in Texas and go, oh, I could have a life-changing experience. Nah, I'm going to spend that money on a big screen TV. You know, I think there's something in there that happens, and there's some sort of little loop we get caught up into, which is, nesting within our current environment and stabilizing ourselves there, rather than doing the thing that could be a profound change to us.
Mm-hmm. So one last message I would say to past me and to encourage them to figure this stuff out is to get more in touch with your brain. Get more in touch with your thoughts, more in touch with your feelings. That's been one of the biggest things for me over the last year, is as I've really leaned into Rome Research, the digital note-taking software we've talked about. But again, it also can be a physical notebook. I've also done a ton of voice recordings and video recordings of myself over the last year. And it's really helped me, one, talk things out, think things through, to get more in touch with what I am thinking and what I am feeling. And so the earlier in your life, I think you can start to understand those things and realize, like, oh, like, I am really upset right now. I got triggered by something. I'm angry. Like, I'm not actually mad at my friend Johnny. Like, it's just he did that thing that reminded me of my deadbeat dad or whatever, and now I'm triggered, and oh, now I'm ruining my relationship with Johnny because of that, right? And obviously there's levels to that, but I'd say the first step, and it kind of ties into some of the things you were saying, which is when you're talking about reducing your anxieties and getting people who love you around you. But for me, I guess more specifically, it's get in touch with your own thoughts, your own feelings, and I would encourage you guys to start journaling of some sort, even if it's just you talking into your phone and leaving yourself a voice memo.
Yeah, I think the journaling and having some journal prompts that can keep you focused on the big topics is important, because we were talking earlier about that zooming in, that focusing down and narrowing of attention and focus as a means to survive. It's really interesting, that thing that you might be thinking you need to survive, which might be the new iPhone. All of a sudden you go, wait, hang on. And if you could back out of that for just a second, you could realize that maybe this is not that important. And that might ease a lot of anxiety and make your whole life easier. So there's ranges of that. It can be dealing with objects, it could be dealing with people and friends. But once again, and I'll circle back around to meditation on that, is that meditation is sort of this ability to be in the present. And once you're there and you realize everything is actually fine in that present moment, then you go, then why am I so anxious all the time? Because you're literally fine. You're sitting there feeling your body, and your body is fine right now. So that return to the present moment is very just kind of, I don't know, it's a balancing mechanism against all these anxieties, looking into the past and the future at the same time and getting worked up by them.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and mention it here because it's relevant. The concept of body scanning, which we talked about in our episode with Justin Corno, and we'll also include a link to a good video where you can start. Very simple, straightforward, and easy way to start meditating. It walks you through, paying attention to different parts of your body. And guess what? Journaling, thinking, feeling, meditating, all of these things, if you've never done them before, they're going to feel weird. They're going to feel weird. Yeah. And you're going to think you're doing them wrong. Maybe you won't, but, those are all natural things to have, and guess what? Just like anything else, like we talked about on our Skilled Hobbies episode, like the more you do a thing, the more you're going to get used to it. You're going to, if it is something that you need to shift and do a little differently, like you can develop those things. But I don't think I've heard anyone say like, oh man, I've been meditating for a year every day now and I've been doing it wrong. It really sucks. It's like, no, like even if you're doing it wrong, you're taking that time intentionally. And even if you do it completely wrong and your brain's all over the place, all type of stuff, you intentionally took the time to invest in yourself. And that is a huge thing. And the earlier you can figure that one out, the better, I think.
Yeah. Big fan of, taking care of yourself. I think there's also this tendency now where we're thinking about almost everything through the individual lens, through ourselves and helping ourselves and fixing ourselves and all this kind of stuff. And one of these days we'll do another episode where we'll talk more about the flaws with that kind of approach.
Yeah, for sure. I like that idea. And then the last thing on this is back to past read is there are a lot of smart people out there that are just as smart as you or smarter than you. Listen to their advice and pay attention to the mistakes that they made so you don't make them yourself. That's been one of the hardest things for me, and some of it I think is the stubbornness and the wanting to like do things on your own and that type of thing. And it's frustrating to see other people in my life kind of going the same path. And I'm like, no, don't do it that way. I did it that way. And so that's me to pass out.
But I'm also a big proponent of like, that path did not work for me, but I've been kind of thinking that it didn't work for me because I'm a certain kind of person. They're a different kind of person, and they may be able to make it work. So I've been kind of doing this thing lately where I'm just like, have at it. Like,
yeah.
I'll just cheer from the sidelines, like, good job, like, call me if you need something. Because I've kind of watched things as like, well, if I was doing it, I would do X, Y, and Z. And then I look at my life and I go, well, I'm not like raking in millions of dollars, so maybe I should calm down on my advice.
Yeah, for sure. And again, like with every one of these nuggets, there's definitely a flip side to it. Yeah. But I guess my main point was, at the very least, start listening to other people, taking in that information and giving it more weight than, people currently do. Like, oh, you just tell me this thing and then it kind of bounces off. I'm like, and I've had some people I tell like, hey, look, I just want to let you know, I'm not just telling you that thing now. Like, I'm telling you that because I've seen you do this behavior now many, many times. Yeah. I'm an outside observer. I want the best for you. I can see that you're doing this. And here are 5 ways that you could try any one of those, and I think it might help your situation. And then it's like, yeah.
So and then it's on them to take it or not.
Exactly.
But at least you're putting it out there for them.
And that's my advice to the past people of Reid and also to these people here is, hey, if someone's doing that already for you, or even if they're not, get out a book, read a podcast, listen to a podcast.
This is, we give you a lot of impossible tasks here. Like, smell your own nose.
Yeah. Just listen to what other people have done and learn from their mistakes, because it's 2022. We've had a long time of humans living on this world. So other people have figured out stuff. And that's been another cool thing, is seeing some of this stuff like mindfulness is like, oh, yeah, now it's very much in vogue and it's growing in popularity. And yet there's people who have been doing like meditation for thousands of years, right? It's like, yeah, we know. We've been over here this whole time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, any last things before we wrap up?
No, I was kind of... you're going to need to do a really good recap of this so that I can learn from it in the future.
Yeah. So today we've been talking about what would we tell our past selves. I wish that I knew what I knew now when I was younger. That's the line from the song. If you guys want to look it up, it's called Ooh La La, O-O-H, Space La, by the band Faces. And maybe we'll include a link in the chat to that. But Ryder started off, he was talking about some of the first things for him were paying less attention and less pressure on what's going to come in the future. And you don't need to do all of those things. And also, hey, you need to surround yourself with some people, or at least a person who loves you and cares with you and can help deprogram your anxieties around the world, and help you figure out the things that you want to do. And oh, by the way, just have less stress and concern about what that might end up being. Is that a rough recap of the things, some of the things you were saying? And then for me, all about that, but Ryder had asked me, he's like, well, if you were younger you talking to present day you, what is something you would tell yourself today? And for me, that was paying a little more attention and valuing the things that I've already done, right? And making sure that, hey, yeah, you want to do all these other things. There's all the stuff you're going to maybe do in the future, but look at all the things that you've done, this last week, this last month, this last year, up to your whole life up to this point, and appreciate that. And also be more present and pay attention to, yeah, you are doing this thing that you're working on and it's big and you want to do all that other stuff. But don't forget that that's just one part of your life, right? And you have all these other things that are great around you. So make sure you're experiencing them. And I didn't mention it earlier, but I'll make sure to mention it now so we can get it in the chat, which is our episode on Thursday was talking about the things that make my life rich or fulfilled or something like that. And that's where I talked about what that is. And I talked a little bit about some of the things that are on my list, and we're going to do future live streams where I actually go through my list. And of course, part of that challenge for that show was telling people to make the list themselves. So value the things that you've already done, being present and observing those things. And then after that, I kind of came up with a mantra, if you will, which was be open, learn, explore, and have fun. And I said, if you can do those things then you'll probably be okay. And then after that, I feel like I told people to expose themselves to each other. That was good.
That's always a good thing to throw into the episodes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
just be careful, like as you turn and you expose, be careful of the whip angle, because it can. You got to make sure there's a radius.
Yeah. Just little things. Only
little
a professional
things, exactly.
exposer would know.
Yeah. What can I say? And another one was the last couple of things were telling people to get more in touch with their thoughts and their feelings and their brain, and recognize that wherever you go, there you will be. So the better you can understand yourself and know what you're thinking and know what you're feeling, the better off you'll be as a whole. And then listen to people who have experienced things in the past. Of course, everything comes with a grain of salt, but recognize that, yeah, you're trying to do that thing the exact way that 9 million other people have done it, and they failed. Well, maybe at least learn from their failures. Even if you're going to go stubbornly do that thing, at least learn so you know what some of the landmines coming up are. So that was it. When it comes to, I don't know, a challenge from today, do you have anything that pops to mind or
Yeah, I don't know. I talked a lot about meditation, right? And I also talked a little bit about trying to surround yourself with the right people. Also being more adventurous. So those were the three kind of things that I was talking the most on. Do you think you can cobble together a challenge
so
from
as
there?
Being adventurous, surrounding yourself with people you love, and meditation. Yeah. I think I can. So we're gonna classic us. We're gonna do a two-prong challenge here. So the one along those lines is to pick a single person and you can have more than one person if you'd like, but get at least one person. They could be a friend, they could be a family member, it could be just a person that's in your life, and be like, hey, like I heard these crazy guys on the internet, two wild and crazy guys. Yeah. And they told us like, I want to try this thing, and they're like, hey, we give, there's Reid, who was giving advice to his younger self, which for him was only a couple years, and there was Ryder, who was telling his younger self, which a lot more years.
Yeah, a lot of years.
I can't even count that high, but they were saying to do this thing, and the thing is to get a person or a couple of people and do a meditation together. And so, hey, all right, look, you're someone who either I already care about, or I would like for us to kind of deepen this, and we see each other every day anyways, like why not, let's just try this thing out and see where it goes, and do a meditation. And as part of that meditation, focus on how can I be more explorative? And what that is for each person may be completely different. Like for some people, maybe that's, I'm going to go take that trip abroad that I've never done, or maybe I'll just take the first step and apply for a passport, because I know a lot of people don't have that. The stats on that are anyways shocking. Yeah, thank you. So that's a one way to combine all of that. And maybe for some people it's just, you know what, I'm going to try Asian food again. I had Chinese food and I wrote off that entire genre of food, if you will, the entire world of food, because I didn't like that one type. I would say that's one thing for me is like, just pick a thing. Like maybe it's food, maybe it's music, maybe it's travel, like, and just start to explore a little more and just come from a place of curiosity and not judgment. One of the things we talked about on Friday was, I was like, okay, if I watch a B movie, like, is there a point to a B movie? Like, why should they exist? Why should we not just make all A movies now and all great movies? And it was like, well, if that movie made you think anything, made you feel anything, made you enjoy some time with somebody, like, there's value in all of those things. And I would pulled out a couple of the things that I was like, I happened to randomly click on one video on Netflix, or one movie on Netflix, and it was about a startup, and one of the partners died right on the same week I'm bringing on my first employee. I was like, what a great random movie to click on.
Nice choice. Yeah, I like the B movies because they can be more experimental. Like if we made all A movies, all movies would be the same. Because they just figure out a formula. That's an A movie.
Right.
And I'm just like,
which people are doing.
Yes,
that exists very much in this world. But I think of, when I like watch a movie now, I love the Shakespearean phrase or whatever, and I'm sure it existed before that too, which is, I bite my thumb at you. I remember we did that
prithee, nuncle,
in high school when we were listening to that. But like when you go into something with that critical view, like, please me, oh movie, versus like, hey, no, I'm going to let this thing happen at me. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to try and take some good things out of it. It's kind of like comedy. If you try and watch a stand-up comedy and be like, oh, they told me this would be funny, you told me, like, you're not going to enjoy it the same as if you're like in the mood, you're vibing, there's other people around you. So yeah, looking for the best in things. So the one challenge was to find somebody and do a meditation on how you can be more explorative. Of course, that led into a little bit of a rabbit hole. And then the next challenge, the tear tongue. I think of a snake's tongue every time I think of this for whatever reason.
That's very weird.
Yeah, I know. Just,
Nope. Stop.
Some people
Stop
actually
it.
fork their tongues intentionally.
I know. Stop.
Does it make you hurt inside? Because
Yes,
it kind
a
of
little
does
bit.
for me. Is for you to do this little exercise for yourself. I don't care how old you are. Just sit down for 15 minutes and say, hey, if I were to tell past me or, other youngsters or whatever, what I knew now, what I wish that I knew then, what would I tell them? And just sit down and write it out, or record a little video, or record a voice recording, and you guys can send it us. Send it us.
Yeah, we'll do some grammar edit.
Yeah, you guys can send it to us. You can contact us on our website, helpfulforlife.com. Hit the contact us button in the top right, or you can comment on whatever platform that you're on. Well, any other last thoughts before we go off into the ocean and end it all?
Bring some floaties.
With that, y'all have a wonderful rest of your day.